The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Jnana Yoga, Chapter 8, Realization, Part 1. I will read to you from one of the Upanishads. It is called the Katha Upanishad. Some of you perhaps have read a translation by Sir Edwin Arnold called The Secret of Death. In our last lecture, we saw how the inquiry, which started with the origin of the world and the creation of the universe, failed to obtain a satisfactory answer from without, and how it then turned inwards. This book psychologically takes up that suggestion, questioning into the internal nature of man. It was first asked who created the external world and how it came into being. Now the question is, what is it that in man which makes him live and move? And what becomes of that when he dies? The first philosophers studied the material substance and tried to reach the ultimate through that. At the best, they found a personal governor of the universe, a human being immensely magnified, but yet to all intents and purposes a human being. But that could not be a whole of truth. At best, it could only be a partial truth. We see this universe as human beings, and our God is our human explanation of the universe. Suppose a cow were philosophical and had a religion, it would have a cow universe and a cow solution of the problem. And it would not be possible that it could see our God. Suppose cats become philosophers. They would see a cat universe and have a cat solution of the problem of the universe and a cat ruling it. So we see from this that our explanation of the universe is not the whole of the solution. Neither does our conception cover the whole of the universe. It would be a great mistake to accept that tremendously selfish position which man is apt to take. Such a solution of the universal problem as we can get from outside labors under this difficulty, that in the first place the universe we see is not our own, is our particular universe, our own view of the reality. The reality we cannot see through the senses, we cannot comprehend it. We can only know the universe from the point of view of the being with five senses. Suppose we obtain another sense, the whole universe of beings changes for us. Suppose we had magnetic sense. It is quite possible that we might then find millions and millions of forces in existence which we do not know now and for which we have no present sense or feeling. Our senses are limited, very limited indeed. And within these limitations exists what we call our universe. And our God is the solution of that universe. But that cannot be the solution of the whole problem. But man cannot stop there. He is a thinking being and wants to find a solution which will comprehensively explain all the universes. He wants to see a world which is at once the world of men and of gods and of all possible beings, and to find a solution which will explain all phenomena. We see we must first find the universe which includes all universes. We must find something which by itself must be the material running all these various planes of existences. Whether we apprehend it through the senses or not, if we could possibly find something which we could know as common property of the lower as well as of the higher worlds, then our problem would be solved. Even if by sheer force of logic alone we could understand that there must be one basis of all existence, then our problem might approach to some sort of a solution. But this solution certainly cannot be obtained only through the world we see and know. because it is only a partial view of the whole. Our only hope lies in penetrating deeper. The early thinkers discovered that the further they were from the center, the more marked were the variations and differentiations. And the more nearer they approached the center, the nearer they were to unity. The nearer we are to the center of the circle, the nearer we are to the common ground in which all radii meet. And the further we are from the center, the more divergent is our radial line from others. The external world is far away from the center, and so there is no common ground in it where all phenomena of existence can meet. At best, the external world is one part of the whole of phenomena. There are other parts, the mental, the moral, and the intellectual, the various planes of existence. And to take up only one and find a solution of the whole one of that is simply impossible. We first therefore want to find somewhere a center from which, as it were, all the other planes of existence start, and standing there we should try to find a solution. That is the proposition. And where is that? It is within us. The ancient sages penetrated deeper and deeper until they found that in the innermost core of the human soul is the center of the whole universe. All the planes gravitate towards that one point. This is the common ground, and standing there alone we can find a common solution. So the question who made this world is not very philosophical, nor does its solution amount to anything. This, the Katha Upanishad speaks in a very figurative language. There was in ancient times a very rich man who made a certain sacrifice which required that he should give away everything that he had. Now, this man was not very sincere. He wanted to get fame and glory of having made the sacrifice, but he was only giving things that were of no further use to him: old cows, barren, blind, and lame. He had a boy called Nachiketas. This boy saw that his father was not doing what was right and that he was breaking his vow, but he did not know what to say to him. In India, father and mother are the living gods to their children. And so the boy approached the father with the greatest respect and humility, inquiring of him, "Father, to whom are you going to give me? For your sacrifice requires that everything shall be given away." The father was very much vexed at this question and replied, "What do you mean, boy? A father giving away his own son?" The boy asked the question a second time and a third time. Then the angry father answered, "Thee I give unto death." And the story goes on to say that the boy went to Yama, the god of death. Yama was the first person who died. He went to heaven and became the governor of all the Pitris. All the good people who die go and live with him for a long time. He is a very pure and holy person, chaste and good, as his name implies. So the boy went to Yama's world. Even gods are sometimes not at home, and 3 days this boy had to wait there. After the third day, Yama returned. "O learned one," said Yama, "you have been here waiting for 3 days without food, and you are a guest worthy of respect. Salutations to thee, O Brahmin, and welfare to me. I am very sorry I was not at home, but for that I will make amends. Ask 3 boons, one for each day." And the boy asked, "My first boon is that my father's anger against me may pass away, that he will be kind to me and recognize me when you allow me to depart." Yama granted this fully. The next boon was that he wanted to know about a certain sacrifice which took people to heaven. Now we have seen that the oldest idea which we have got in the Samahita portion of the Vedas was only about heaven. where they had bright bodies and lived with their fathers. Gradually, other ideas came, but they were not satisfying. There was still the need for something higher. Living in heaven would not be a very different life from life in this world. At best, it would only be a very healthy, rich man's life with plenty of sense enjoyments and a sound body which knows no disease. It would be this material world, only a little more refined. And we have seen the difficulty that the external material world can never solve the problem. So, no heaven can solve the problem. If this world cannot solve the problem, no multiplication of this world can do so. Because we must always remember that matter is only an infinitesimal part of the phenomenon of nature. The vast part of the phenomenon which we actually see is not matter. For instance, in every moment of our life, what a great part is played by thought and feeling compared with the material phenomena outside. How vast is this internal world with its tremendous activity? The sense phenomena are very small compared with it. The heaven solution commits this mistake. It insists that the whole of phenomena is only in touch, taste, sight, smell, and sound. So, this idea of heaven did not give full satisfaction to all. Yet, Nachiketas asks as the second boon about some sacrifice through which people might attain to this heaven. There was an idea in the Vedas that these sacrifices pleased the gods and took human beings to heaven. In studying all religions, you notice the fact that whatever is old becomes holy. For instance, our forefathers in India used to write on birch bark, but in time they learned how to make paper. Yet the birch bark is still looked upon as very holy. When the utensils in which they used to cook in ancient times were improved upon, the old ones became holy. And nowhere is this idea more kept up than in India. Old methods, which must be 9 or 10,000 years old, as of rubbing two sticks together to make fire, are still followed. At the time of sacrifice, no other method will do. So, with the other branch of the Asiatic Aryans, their modern descendants still like to obtain fire from lightning, showing that they used to get the fire this way. Even when they learnt other customs, they kept up the old ones, which then became holy. So with the Hebrews, they used to write on parchment. They now write on paper, but parchment is very holy. So with all nations, each rite which you now consider holy was simply an old custom, and the Vedic sacrifice were of this nature. In course of time, they found better methods of life. Their ideas were much improved. Still, these old forms remained, and from time to time they were practiced and received a holy significance. Then, a body of men made it their business to carry on these sacrifices. These were the priests. They speculated on the sacrifices, and the sacrifices became everything to them. The gods came to enjoy the fragrance of these sacrifices, and it was considered that everything in the world could be got by the power of sacrifices. If certain oblations were made, certain hymns were chanted, certain peculiar forms of altars were made, the gods would grant everything. So Nachiketa asks, by what form of sacrifice can a man go to heaven? The second boon was also readily granted by Yama, who promised that this sacrifice should henceforth be named after Nachiketas. Then the third boon comes, with which the Upanishad proper begins. The boy said, there is this difficulty. When a man dies, some say he is, others that he is not. Instructed by you, I desire to understand this. But Yama was frightened. He had been very glad to grant the other two boons, but Yama was frightened. Now he said the gods in ancient times were puzzled on this point. This subtle law is not easy to understand. Choose some other boon, O Nachiketas. Do not press me on this point. Release me. The boy was determined and said, what you have said is true, O death, that even the gods had doubts on this point, and it is not easy matter to understand. But I cannot obtain another exponent like you, and there is no other boon equal to this. Death said, ask for sons and grandsons who will live 100 years, many cattle, elephants, gold and horses. Ask for empire on this earth, and live as many years as you like. Or choose any other boon which you think equal to these, wealth and long life. Or be thou a king, O Nachiketas, on the wide earth. I will make thee the enjoyer of all desires. Ask for all those desires which are difficult to obtain in the world. These heavenly maidens with chariots and music, which are not to be obtained by man, are yours. Let them serve you, O Nachiketas. Do not question me as to what comes after death. Nachiketa said, these are merely things of a day, O death. They wear away the energy of all the sense organs. Even the longest life is very short. These horses and chariots, dances and songs may remain with thee. Man cannot be satisfied by wealth. Can we retain wealth when we behold thee? We shall live only so long as thou desires. Only the boon which I have asked for is chosen by me. Yama was pleased with this answer and said, perfection is one thing and enjoyment is the other. These two, having two different ends, engage men differently. He who chooses perfection becomes pure. He who chooses enjoyment misses his true end. Both perfection and enjoyment present themselves to man. The wise man, having examined both, distinguishes one from the other. He chooses perfection as being superior to enjoyment. But the foolish man chooses enjoyment for the pleasure of his body. O Nachiketas, having thought upon the things which are only apparently desirable, thou hast wisely abandoned them. Death then proceeded to teach Nachiketas.